everywhere. GBS.
Good afternoon. It's 1 p.m. here in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and this is The Ambassador. With me, your ambassador, Paul Mathenge. And this is where we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. Now to our first story. South Africa has expressed concern over United States President Donald Trump's 30% tariff hike, warning that it poses a significant barrier to trade and shared prosperity. The move threatens key exports, including steel, agricultural products, and vehicles, and has contributed to a weakening of South African rand. Paris Kigo.
South Africa's presidency has raised concern over the impact of the U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff hikes, which it views as a barrier to trade and shared prosperity. While expressing a commitment to maintaining a mutually beneficial trade relationship with the United States, South Africa emphasized the urgent need for a new trade agreement to ensure long-term trade certainty. Trump's 30% tariff on South Africa export, which include key products like steel, agricultural goods, and vehicles, has put significant strain on the country's trade relations with its second-largest export partner. Economist Hanti Pay highlighted that while South Africa has a diversified export portfolio, including over $2 billion in vehicle and parts exports, smaller nations with less diversified economies may be more severely impacted by the tariffs.
South Africa has quite an expansive trade relationship with the U.S. It's been there for quite a long time. It is on what we call hard commodities, or that would include things like steel. Then soft commodities, that would be, as you say, agricultural products. That would include citrus, grapes, and all of that. But also export many other products. We know we export to the U.S. cars, for example. So that sector. So all of these sectors are sectors that are quite key to South Africa, that are quite important, and that will be affected.
The country's currency, the rand, fell to a 3-month low as concern about the tariff hike compounded with domestic political tensions, particularly regarding the Democratic Alliance's potential exit from the coalition government over disagreements about the 2025 budget.
Sure. I mean, smaller countries are probably the most hit because part of their issue is also the way that they're very concentrated industries. So they're not very well diversified economies. So smaller countries will have, for example, kind of like this, a particular manufacturing sector that may be very focused, say, to textiles, and then you don't see a lot of anything else, as opposed to South Africa that is quite a diversified group of exports, and those are diversified into different kinds of countries.
This development signals a challenging period for South Africa's economy amid global trade uncertainties. Paris Kigo, GBS News.
Tensions are rising in South Sudan following the arrest of Vice President Riek Machar late last month. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni yesterday arrived in Juba for a brief visit where he was welcomed by President Salva Kiir. The two leaders held a private talks amid growing concerns over the future of the peace agreement signed in 2018. Museveni's visit comes just as African Union mediators arrive in the capital to assess the situation. Elvis Moyodi.
Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni arrived in South Sudan's capital, Juba, amid rising tensions following the arrest of Vice President Riek Machar last month. He was welcomed by President Salva Kiir, and the two leaders held a private meeting to discuss the situation. Tensions have escalated as Machar's political group declared that the 2018 peace agreement is no longer valid. This has sparked fears of renewed conflict, with government troops loyal to Kiir clashing with Machar's supporters. Museveni's visit coincided with the arrival of African Union mediators, who are in Juba to assess the crisis and explore ways to prevent further violence in South Sudan. Elvin Muyodi, GBS News.
At least 89 people have been killed and many more injured in brutal attacks by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces on villages in Omdurman, Sudan. The RSF assault included random artillery shelling, gunfire, widespread looting, and the forced transportation of stolen goods. This violence adds to Sudan's ongoing humanitarian crisis, with millions displaced as the army continue to make gains in the conflict, regaining control of key regions. Let's take a listen.
At least 89 people have been killed in a series of attacks on villages in Omdurman, Sudan, by the Rapid Support Forces, according to a Sudanese human rights organization. The Rapid Support Forces launched random artillery shelling and a direct gunfire during the attack, causing numerous injuries. The Emergency Lawyers Association has condemned the Rapid Support Forces for violating human rights and international law, citing incidents of widespread looting, arbitrary arrest, and forced labor. The association also reported that several young men were detained and coerced into transporting looted goods. Many survivors have fled to the Jabar Awiria area in search of safety. The violence in Sudan comes amid a growing displacement crisis, with an estimated 8.8 million people internally displaced and 3.5 million fleeing the country. The Sudanese army has recently gained control of key regions, including Senna, Al-Jazira, White Nile State, and the capital, Khartoum. Despite setbacks on the battlefield, the army is now focusing on regaining control of Darfur, a region that remains a significant point of contentions in the ongoing conflict. Paris Kigo, GBS News.
The ambassador will take a short break. We'll be right back as we debunk more stories on global diplomacy and geopolitics.
What is always before you but can't be seen?
Kudiscover talent.
Kudiscover ulijuangaje like unaweza imba like
Kini Trace Jimmy Kipchoge kwa ngoma na mfala wanani diss na wanabonga kwa ngoma, mafan jua ananipenda ndo nazidi kwa roga, wenye walenjaribu mazee walishachoka na nikozabe meditation naendelesha generation niliofanya kalki.
Wewe at 1 year old ulikuwa unafanya nini? You're feeling the vibe. Ulitoa a few days ago, unaweza taka utuambie like ulikuwa unafikiria nini when you came up with the lyrics?
So I'm doing my thing. Don't try and stop me when I'm doing my thing. I'm tryna boss, let me do my thing. And if you're tryna win, you can be on my team. So I'm doing my thing. Don't try and stop me when I'm doing my thing. I'm tryna boss, let me do my thing.
You feel like you're young at heart, I'm an old soul. If you could only listen to one singer or band for the rest of your life, who will you choose?
And the question of the day is, can you survive without internet?
Ngumu, plus kuachilia hizo story tu zote zikupite ni ngori.
Niwaambie ukweli. Like hii ni kama kuambia mtu mwenye alikuwa amezoea kushindana nguo, mwambie toa nguo ushinde uchi. Hiyo huku atriki kwa sababu sasa like ilikuwa imekuingia kwa kichwa kabisa.
Mimi nimesomea day school na niocha. So kukuwa na simu hadi ni ile katururu, si smartphone, ni ile katururu.
Sasa unaweza kaa holi ya bila simu.
Spend hii most of the time kwa simu. Also you need to run skills. So nilipata na place hapa nikapo apply huko. And then I started learning skills. Digital skills.
Hadi siku mbili haiwezi.
Kwa wiki naachilia hata kama ni siku mbili ama sometimes na extend to wiki mzima. Napata shiki simu yangu.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back to the Ambassador, and now the United Nations has sounded the alarm over the devastating impact of the last week earthquake in Myanmar, which has claimed thousands of lives and worsened an already severe humanitarian crisis. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for urgent international actions, warning that the disaster has exposed deeper vulnerabilities in the country, where millions were already in need of assistance due to ongoing conflict and violence. Let's take a listen.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has raised alarms over the escalating crisis in Myanmar, where a devastating earthquake last week has compounded an already dire situation. The quake, which has claimed at least 3,000 lives and left thousands injured, has exposed deeper vulnerabilities in a country already struggling with political, humanitarian and human rights issues.
Death toll is now 3,000 and climbing, with thousands injured and many trapped under the rubble. This disaster has laid bare the deeper vulnerabilities facing people throughout the country. Even before the earthquake, Myanmar was beset by political, human rights and humanitarian crises, hurting people, spilling over to neighboring countries and the wider region, and opening the door to transnational crime.
Before the disaster, nearly 1/3 of the population needed urgent humanitarian assistance due to the ongoing conflicts and violence. With monsoon season approaching, Guterres emphasized the need for swift, coordinated international action to provide critical aid and ensure that humanitarian access remains unhindered.
Nearly 20 million people, or 1 in every 3 in Myanmar, required already humanitarian aid. And millions had fled their homes from conflict and violence. The earthquake has supercharged the suffering, with the monsoon season just around the corner. We need rapid action on several fronts. I appeal for rapid, safe, sustained and unimpeded humanitarian access to reach those most in need across the country.
In response to the crisis, the United Nations is deploying top officials to Myanmar to strengthen efforts for peace and dialogue. Guterres has called on the international community to increase funding to meet the scale of the crisis and to prioritize political solutions. He welcomed temporary ceasefire but stressed the urgency of transitioning to a broader political dialogue that includes the release of political prisoners and the restoration of democracy. The UN chief reaffirmed the United Nations commitment to standing in solidarity with the people of Myanmar and providing ongoing support in their time of need.
Now is the time to stand in solidarity with the long-suffering people of Myanmar. And the United Nations will keep pushing for peace and life-saving support for the people of Myanmar in their hour of need.
Triza Tiengo, GBS News.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán announced the country's decision to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. The move comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits Budapest, despite facing an arrest warrant from the ICC. During a joint press conference, Netanyahu thanked Orbán for what he called, and I quote, bold and principled decision, criticizing the ICC as politically based.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban announced that the country will withdraw from the International Criminal Court ICC, coinciding with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Budapest.
I was the Prime Minister who signed the document to join the ICC in 2000. And I was the one who signed the document to leave it in the past few days. It is our conviction that in recent years it has become not a neutral legal court, but a political court.
During a joint news conference, Netanyahu praised Orban's decision, calling it a bold and principled move, and criticized the ICC as a politically biased institution.
And you've just taken a bold and principled position on the ICC, and I thank you, Victor. This is not only important for us, it's important for all democracies. It's important to stand up to this corrupt organization.
Hungary is the first European country to welcome Netanyahu since the beginning of the war in Gaza, and is set to become the first European country to exit the ICC. As Hungary pulls away from the ICC, it highlights a shift in its foreign policy, strengthening ties with Israel, while distancing itself from the European Union consensus. Elvin Muyodi, GBS News.
Hundreds of thousands of Gazans are fleeing their homes as Israeli forces ramp up their assault in southern Gaza, advancing into the city of Rafah and deepening the humanitarian crisis, with airstrikes hitting civilians and vital infrastructure. Residents fear the permanent loss of their homes and livelihoods as widespread destructions and displacements continue to engulf the region. Triza Chingo with more.
Hundreds of thousands of Gazans were forced to flee their homes as Israeli forces advance into the southern city of Rafah, part of a newly declared security zone in Gaza.
What they are doing to us is unjust. It's a shame. This is not life. Every day we are moving from one place to another.
The city, which had served as a last refuge for many displaced civilians, is now facing intense attack and destruction. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 97 people in the past 24 hours, including 20 in the northern Shijai neighborhood and 27 in a school sheltering displaced families in Gaza City. As Israeli forces continue their military escalation, residents fear that the move could lead to the permanent depopulation of large parts of Gaza, with Israel potentially seizing crucial agricultural land and water resources. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is deepening, with civilians caught between airstrikes and the ongoing blockade that has left the 2.3 million residents without essential supplies. Local health authorities report over 50,000 deaths in Gaza, while thousands more have been displaced with nowhere to seek refuge. Despite Israel's staged goal of dismantling Hamas, which still controls Gaza, the situation remains unresolved, and the civilian population continues to bear the brunt of the violence. Triza Tiengo, GBS News.
And that's all for today. With me, your Ambassador Paul Mathenge on the Ambassador 1 p.m. Now, follow all of our stories at GBS TV Africa. It's updated through the day. We meet every Thursday and Friday as we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. Thank you for watching.